Thousands of listeners across the nation rely on Garden Variety to grow everything better. And we rely on listener support to sustain our little garden of knowledge. You can help Garden Variety flourish with a gift today. Donate now at ipr.org/donate.
This is Garden Variety, a horticulture podcast from Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm Charity Nebbe. Vegetable gardeners have planted, weeded, nurtured, and mostly finished their harvest. Now it's time to clean up, not just because it's the end of the season for most of the vegetables in our gardens, but because it's the best way to manage disease for next year's growing season. With me now is Chelsea Harbach, plant disease diagnostician with the Iowa State University Plant and Insect Diagnostic Clinic. Hello, Chelsea.
Hi, Charity.
So it is almost the end of the season. Looking back over the summer, what were the greatest hits this summer when it comes to garden disease in Iowa? What were you getting the most phone calls about?
Well, so it was an interesting year. It was very, very wet. And last year was pretty wet. And so I almost expected to see a lot of the same that I saw last year. But I ended up seeing a lot more bacterial diseases this year, which, looking back isn't surprising. Bacteria thrive in really wet weather. So, namely, I saw bacterial leaf spot on peppers, on tomatoes. And while those are, tend to be kind of common diseases, they're ones that I hadn't seen at this level yet in my tenure here at Iowa State. So that was fun. I also saw some more root rot and like vascular diseases, likely due to lots of rain in the soil. Saturated soils for a long time favors some of these soil-borne fungi that can cause these root rots and vascular diseases. And then, your typical foliar fungal diseases, septoria on tomatoes, our favorite, and also not a disease, but we did see more physiological fruit cracking or kind of like funky things on tomato fruits this year. And those aren't caused by diseases, but those are caused by some of the weather extremes that we had this year.
Yeah, I can testify to seeing a lot of that this year. So at the end of the season, when you've done all the things, it is easy to just kind of let things be. Why is that a bad idea?
A lot of these diseases, particularly the ones that are affecting leaves, like the leaf spots, bacterial fungal leaf spots, they will overwinter and survive on the crop residue that you leave in the soil. And as those plant materials fall, it's going to be more difficult to pick up those leaves. So garden cleanup earlier than later is ideal to try and save yourself some problems, both in avoiding needing to, if you really, really wanted to go to the effort of trying to clean up fallen leaves from plants that are done, or if you don't clean up those fallen leaves, that's where those pathogens are going to survive and provide a source of inoculum for these diseases next year. Now, we can't predict the weather this far out. I can't tell you whether or not, going through this effort of cleaning up your garden and getting rid of this inoculum source is going to be 100% worth it next year because I don't know what the weather conditions are going to be like. However, I always think it's better to be safe than sorry. You don't want to be, kicking yourself in the butt for not doing your garden cleanup if we have a wet year next year.
Right. Okay, so when we do that garden cleanup, before we have to pick up all the individual leaves, can we put diseased plant material in our compost bins?
That is Well, it's highly dependent on I think the type of compost you have. If you have a compost bin that you know is going to get to A high enough temperature to kill those pathogens for a sustained period of time, maybe. But I think it's probably you're probably better off to just send the discarded plant residue to your city dump. Just get it out of the garden. Don't use it, or don't throw it in the compost if you can't be certain that it's going to kill those pathogens. And I think having any certainty about whether your compost is gonna get hot enough for long enough is that's a difficult task.
Yeah.
So again, this is another I'd rather be safe than sorry.
All right. And of course, we want to rotate our crops next year because that's good plant disease management as well. It's something we talk about on the show a lot. Do we need to think about how far away we're moving a certain variety of plant when we clean up this year's garden and plan for next year?
Definitely. So these crop rotations, you like if you typically a lot of the pathogens that affect our solanaceous plants, like our tomatoes, our peppers, our eggplants, a lot of the same pathogens affect those types of plants. Not all of them, but so it depends on the disease problem you had, and the strategy you take. You don't want to plant. If you had a bacterial leaf spot problem, you don't want to plant tomatoes where you had the peppers with the problem, because you're not really solving the issue. Now you can rotate with like a cucurbit or like a carrot or something. Definitely be strategic, and also if you don't have like the space to do like a really nice crop rotation, definitely look to see if there are any cultivars of your like vegetable of choice that might offer some resistance. I know that people really like to plant specific cultivars for flavors, but a year or two of a cultivar that could offer some resistance in a garden that has limited space for rotation can help a lot with knocking down the amount of inoculum that's there for your more susceptible, maybe more tasty cultivars.
When we do clean up all of that plant material, we also have some hardscaping left behind as well. For example, tomato cages, maybe they don't really qualify as hardscaping, but tomato cages and even the tools that we use to work in the garden, do we need to clean those to make sure that we're not carrying disease forward?
It kind of depends on the pathogen, but I think in general, it probably doesn't hurt to just like mix up just like a 10% bleach, just your household bleach, 9 parts water, 1 part bleach, and just spray them down with that. And that'll like take care of any lingering spores that might be able to like survive without plant residue.
Are there any things that we should be cleaning up that maybe wouldn't come to mind immediately? I'm wondering specifically, like I do a little bit of container gardening, and I always swap out the soil in that container garden, but should I be cleaning the bucket or the pot that I'm planting in too?
As a plant pathologist, if we're looking at any way to try and set ourselves up for the most success, there's no such thing as too clean. If you've got the time and you've got the energy, I say go for it. It's not going to hurt. And if you've got the energy, like do it. Like that's gold star plus great effort.
All right. Now, of course, we also as gardeners spend a lot of time thinking about soil fertility and nutrition, and we don't want to leave the soil bare at the end of the season. That's a good way to lose soil, right? So what should we do?
Okay. Yeah. You're talking about cover crops, one of my favorite things. So cover crops are great for so many things. And in the garden, you can get benefits from like, limiting like your soil erosion. Some of the cover crops that people might use, there have been some suggestions that some of these, particularly the like cruciferous cover crops, brassicas, can have, like, when incorporated into the soil in the following year, could have some benefit against some soil-borne pathogens. But in general, you're going to get a nice like nutrient return later in the season, and depending on the type of cover crop you use, you could get some benefits from weed suppression the following year. And I know how onerous the task is of weeding a garden. So, if you can get some cover crops down, you essentially, you have the opportunity for almost like a living mulch to help with weed suppression. And when you have that mulch layer down, you've got that layer between the soil and your plants that you're worried about. So that could also help a little bit with protecting from any inoculum of foliar diseases that might be in the soil.
When you say cruciferous cover crops, that probably doesn't bring exact plants to mind for a lot of us.
I said brassica, and then I'm like, I don't know if either of those are like making make sense.
Okay, so what are some of your favorites?
Yeah, like you could use canola, you could use radish, oh my God, like turnips, mustard. Yeah, anything that, so like they these are all like in the same family as a broccoli. So they have this like anything that you can think of that has that kind of like tangy, almost like sulfury taste, like those are generally brassicas. And so you can use those. Obviously these ones don't overwinter. They're gonna winter kill. So if you're gonna use these, you want to get them planted early so they can get established.
And is now early enough?
Yeah. I'd get it in now.
This weekend.
You're almost running out of time for those kinds of cover crops. But definitely if you're going to use those kinds of cover crops, use a mix, include some kind of a grass, like oats, something that's going to like overwinter. Oats will provide, or they'll also winter kill, but they'll provide like that nice living mulch and, maybe make your spring a little bit easier.
All right. I love that. Chelsea Harbach, plant disease diagnostician with the Iowa State University Plant and Insect Diagnostic Clinic. For more gardening information and tips, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Find out more at iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. Garden Variety is a production of Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension. It's produced by me, Erin Stile, Caitlin Troutman, and the Iowa Public Radio talk show team. For more garden goodness, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Just go to iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time.